There is grandeur in this view of life.
Welcome to Evolution Talk with Rick Coast, an introduction to the oldest story ever told.
"43 episodes ago, I interviewed Charles Darwin. Now, that entailed building a time machine and traveling back in time to 1869. I found out since then that doing so, going back in time, creates all sorts of paradoxes, so I've promised never to do it again. Going back in time, that is. I never said anything about bringing someone forward through time, so I have. And no, it's not Charles Darwin, although I would really love to interview him again. This is the next best thing. Now, would you like to say something?
Hello.
How about you tell everyone who you are?
Into this little contraption?
Yes, the mic.
I am Emma Darwin.
You can say it normally, Emma, just like I am.
Oh, yes. Of course. You told me that before we started, didn't you? I've never seen one of these contraptions. All right. I am Emma Darwin.
Perfect. Now, Emma, as you probably know without me having to tell you, is the wife of Charles Darwin.
What is it that you would like to know?
Well, let's start with the easy stuff, like the stuff that anyone can get from books, and we'll move on from there.
They write books about us?
Yes, they do, and movies.
Movies?
Oh, right. Movies are pictures that move.
How amazing. Movies. Charles will love to hear about that. So, you just want the basics, am I right?
You are right.
Well then, my name is Emma Darwin. I was Emma Wedgwood before I married Charles. That was in 1839, in the middle of winter. Charles and I were cousins, by the way. My father was Josiah Wedgwood II. His sister was Charles' mother. It's not very complicated when you think about it. We had 10 children. 3 are no longer with us. What year did you say this was?
It's 2016.
2016. Well then, from your perspective, none of them are with us any longer, including myself and Charles. When did we die, might I ask?
I'm not really sure I'm supposed to tell you that, Emma.
Right. Wouldn't be proper now, would it? What else did you need to know?
How about the year that it was before I brought you here to talk with you?
1862.
So Charles had already published on the origin of species.
Yes, that was 3 years ago. Poor Charles.
Now, why poor Charles?
The book has taken a terrible toll on him. Thankfully, he has Thomas there to debate it all for him. I'm not sure Charles could handle all of that. Not that he would want to. He's too busy.
Now, by Thomas, you mean Huxley, right?
I do, yes.
Why don't we talk about that? The book and your views, and how they might differ from your husband's.
That goes way back.
How do you mean?
Our differences in views. Not about the transmutation of species and natural selection. He had me quite convinced of that for years. But what it entails. It did trouble me at first, however.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Of course. Here, I've brought some letters. Charles saved all of my letters to him. Oh, here's one. It's dated November 1838. He had been back for almost 2 years at that point.
From his voyage on the Beagle?
Yes. He had been back for almost 2 years and had already proposed to me. He was very busy with his research, so I sent him a lot of letters as was proper. He wasn't as good at keeping up with me when it came to letters, by the way. It was a little irritating, actually, although I never let on. I pretended that it was okay. It wasn't. So, here's a part that might interest you. When I am with you, I think all melancholy thoughts keep out of my head, but since you are gone, some sad ones have forced themselves in. I fear that our opinions on the most important subjects would differ widely. My reason tells me that honest and conscientious doubts cannot be a sin, but I feel it would be a painful void between us. I thank you from my heart for your openness with me, and I should dread the feeling that you were concealing your opinions from the fear of giving me pain.
What opinions were causing you pain?
At the time, it was his opinions about the creation of species. It was new to me. Not entirely new. His grandfather Erasmus had similar thoughts, but Charles took it all a step further. He had evidence for it. He traced it scientifically.
So these opinions conflicted with your own?
Yes.
About religion, I take it?
It was. It bothered Charles as well, I might add. I think he wanted to be able to prove that it was God who was responsible for it all at first. That each new animal was the result of some grand plan or design. This began to change for him when he went to Galapagos. There were birds and great tortoises there, animals that were very much alike in some ways, but different in others depending on the island they lived on. Being apart, being separated, changed them. They were isolated. What Charles saw was that given a very long period of time and separation, these changes could accumulate so that what had started out being the same species was now different.
All life, right?
Yes, all life, including you and I. This is what troubled Charles and what troubled me. More me than Charles. But he kept his feelings hidden, while I spoke about my troubles out loud. You need to do so, you know. He allowed his to fester. They caused him a lot of anxiety. Here's another one. This one I wrote him a year later. There is only one subject in the world that has ever given me a moment's uneasiness, and I believe I think about that very little when I am with you. And I do hope that though our opinions may not agree upon all points of religion, we may sympathize a good deal in our feelings on the subject.
From what I've read both in books about your husband and also in his letters, he struggled with this also, didn't he? What I mean is, when it comes to his own feelings about what his theory meant for creation and also a creator. Now, in one particular letter, one that he wrote to Joseph Hooker, he referred to someone who would write a book such as he had as being a devil's chaplain. Now, it's oddly prophetic in a way, given the trouble the book must have caused him after it was published, right?
It did. I always felt that the book was the source of his stomach troubles and anxieties, even before it was published. But afterwards, yes, he struggled. He struggled with what it would do to me, because of what it had done to him. Charles was an admirer of William Paley. Do you know who he is?
Yes, he said that you wouldn't think twice about finding a rock on a heath, but that if you found a watch, you would know it had been created by a designer, right?
That's it exactly. Compare the watch to you and I, and there you have it. It was a very popular argument.
It still is.
Is it now? In spite of Charles' book?
Yes, it's actually still a hot topic of debate.
Poor Charles. Sometimes I think he would have liked to have been that quiet country parson. He had thoughts of that, you know, long before writing his book. Charles was so appreciative of anyone who came to his defense on the subject, or said a kind word on his behalf. Here, I have one more to read to you, if you don't mind. You said you have listeners, right? People who will hear my voice by speaking into this little Michael?
It's a mic. A microphone. And yes, they will hear you.
So, can they hear me now?
No, not at this moment. It's being recorded. They will later.
Amazing. Okay. So, I wrote this letter to Charles 2 years after he published his book.
So this would have been around 1861?
Exactly. I cannot tell you the compassion I have felt for all your sufferings for these weeks past, that you have had so many drawbacks, nor the gratitude that I have felt for the cheerful and affectionate looks you have given me when I know you have been miserably uncomfortable. When I see your patience, deep compassion for others, self-command, and above all, gratitude for the smallest things done to help you, I cannot help longing that these precious feelings should be offered to heaven for the sake of your daily happiness.
You care deeply for your husband, don't you?
He is my prime treasure. He always was. And I must be getting back to him. He's writing another book, you know, on the descent of man.
I think I've heard about that one.
Of course you have. I forget that all of this is happening in my future, and that I am returning to the past.
Thank you, Mrs. Darwin. Now, before you go, is there anything that you would like people to know?
Is there anything I would like them to know? Yes. Yes, there is. Charles is not a devil's chaplain. He is a very concerned and compassionate man who cares deeply about his work and his family. He is a wonderful father, husband, and friend. And above all, he wants others to share in his joy and wonder at life and its evolution. So, how was that?
It was perfect.
Why, thank you. May I say something else?
Of course.
If you've read my husband's book and you find it troubling, or perhaps someone you know has read it, and they too are having a hard time with it, I want you to know that I did too. That is, until I really thought about it. To think that all living things are connected, that we all share a common ancestor, is most comforting. We are never alone. The same powers of nature that shaped a fly have shaped both you and I. We are here because our ancestors succeeded. Having this knowledge takes nothing away from us or our story. It enhances it. All right, then. I think that's all. Goodbye, Rick.
Bye, Emma. I hope you enjoyed today's interview with Emma Darwin. Emma was brought to life by the brilliant voice actress Mackenzie Bryant. And if you want to learn more about Mackenzie, you can at mackenziebryant.com. And if you want to help the show, just point your browser or your smart device to evolutiontalk.com/support. And if you want to learn more about the music on today's episode, you can find all of this and more at the show's official site, evolutiontalk.com. And as always, thank you for listening and supporting the show. And until next time, please take care of yourself.
Evolution Talk is a Rick Coast production.